What is the modern audience? It seems like to be this mythical thing every entertainment property or studio in the world is looking for, at least in America. And that's the case with the video game industry, especially when you see new recent AAA titles that have been shaping and deforming a lot of the characters that we know from historical franchises like Tomb Raider and changing their overall appearance and bringing this overly mannish and masculine image to a lot of feminine characters in the past, specifically Lara Croft. Even though I wasn't the biggest critic of her face change in this new model for the upcoming Crystal Dynamics Tomb Raider game, I still could understand people's complaints where they're saying they gave her more of a pronounced chin in an almost masculine way, and I could kind of understand their frustration with the overall looks of a lot of female characters. This has been happening not only to Lara Croft, but a bunch of titles that have recently come out. You can just see that, with Lara Croft being the one pointed out most decisively. But you have the Avengers game with Black Widow. People complained about her over angular and muscular face, and you can do the same thing with the new main character for Fable, where they gave her this masculine face, and they did this to Mortal Kombat 1 and a lot of the female characters. You can go back down to Wonder Woman and of course Horizon Zero Dawn. It's just a long list of masculine female characters that have entered the video game space, and it's having people question like what's going on with the appearances of a lot of historical feminine characters getting these overly manly faces and overly mannish bodies and countenance of a lot of these female characters. I think it comes down to what is this modern audience that a lot of companies and Fortune 500 companies are going after, and who decides the definition of what these modern audience people want to get. And I think it goes down to the marketing companies and marketing agencies that are giving this advice to these corporations, to these large video game development studios, saying this is the new market you need to go after. And I think to them the newest market is the LGBTQ community, and according to their stats and statistics, that is the growing market you need to pander to the most. And I think that is what we're seeing from a lot of marketing and ad agencies. That's why you see Dylan Mulvaney becoming the sponsor for Bud Light. That's why you see a giant push to get some advertisement dollars to anything that's supporting an LGBTQ cause, because this is the growing population they think is the majority, and that these are the buying customers they need to placate to. And it's specifically the video game industry. They're hearing things from giant organizations like GLAAD saying 1 in 5 gamers are LGBTQ+, so you need to pander to them and you need to pander to their sensibilities. And that's why we're seeing these overall mannish looking female characters, where that is going for a market that they think is there, which is an LGBTQ market. And why they're making a lot of these characters more manly, at least these female characters, it comes down to their sensitivities of the players that they're focused on, specifically the trans community, where they're having articles discussing what they think the trans community is interested in when it comes to these characters. They have, specifically with Naughty Dog itself, discussed with multiple trans activists about female representation. You see this in this article where Naughty Dog made the characters more manly and less feminine because they reacted to some LGBT community members discussing how it makes them insecure when you have more feminine characters. And I think that's why we had this version of Abby that was muscular and manly, because they were placating towards this new growing market that they're focused on and trying to attack. This is coming from their marketing team that is being raised within an environment that is highly supportive and suggestive to LGBTQ content. I'm talking about colleges and universities. So these new marketing ad execs are coming from a place that is inundated with LGBTQ advertisement and representation. They're trying to bring that to the corporate space, and it is infiltrating the corporate space effectively enough where they're changing entire games, changing their entire focus when it comes to advertisement, and they're developing games specifically for a market that really isn't there, and that is probably overblown by these misguided statistics that are not representing the small minority group in a way where it's seen as what it is. They're making it look like it's the majority or a growing majority, and I think that's the thing that we're getting from corporations and the video game industry, where they're taking these hints from these marketing execs and changing the video game industry on its face. You even have this article where an executive for a large AAA company, EA, is discussing this and saying we're trying to placate to the sensitivities of these LGBTQ members, and we think doing that is going to grow our fan base. And just read the article, I'll give you my thoughts on it, but here we go. It's not really about physical objectification of women. Women, like men, come in all shapes and sizes. To say that having big busty women is unrealistic is untrue. So they understand attractive women is a realistic representation, but here's where it changes. That is only true for trans people. A trans woman can't naturally grow large breasts, and not all trans people can afford implants. If you see a game where the women are less curvy, it's not because of the game designers are worried about receiving backlash from women. It's because they're worried about offending the trans community. From a design standpoint, this is really a challenging problem. I have many board meetings about how to tackle this. Trans people want realistic representation in our games, but they feel excluded if they are represented as too masculine or too feminine. That's why you will see a lot of designers nerfing the female form, so to speak, so that the difference between trans women and cis women is a little less noticeable. So that's why you're seeing the masculizing of a lot of female characters, because they're trying to make the difference between trans women and normal women so indistinguishable, so you won't notice that there is a difference. And this is placating to the sensitivities of the trans community. Then when they interact and discuss the problems they have, they come to this conclusion where they have to make a lot of the female characters more masculine and less feminine. And that's why we're getting these results where you have a Lara Croft. If you do a little tweak on this new Lara Croft design, you can get a man instantly. And I think that's where they're basing the foundations of these character models on manly, masculine figures, because they don't want to offend this small minority community. And that's why we're having a pervasive situation where a lot of female characters are coming out looking like strong-jawed men. And I think we always see this, a lot of female characters with their giant jaws in these games, where you're thinking, where do they come from? Especially Mary Jane, where she just has this giant jaw that came out of nowhere, when originally we had a more feminine look in the Spider-Man 1 game. Doesn't matter if you like that design, but it was undoubtedly a feminine look. And I think we get that same distinction with Peter Parker in Spider-Man 2, where he was more masculine, he had a larger jaw, but in the second one they gave him a feminine look. And I think that's placating a lot of trans activists when it comes to female to male, where they were trying to make these male characters look feminine. And I think that's where we get this overall transition in the looks of a lot of Western video games, where we get a lot of more masculine women. And I think this is a progressive state that is building over time and spreading all throughout the entertainment industry, specifically Hollywood, where you have casting directors saying we're looking for more masculine looking women. And this is coming from the Witcher casting director, and we're trying to go against some standards of beauty so we can placate the senses and sensitivities of a growing minority in the trans community. And this is something that is been developing slowly for the past decade or so, but now it's taking full force, where we're seeing an overabundance of these masculinized looking faces. And this is the buildup of what they consider the modern audience. The modern audience to them is a trans audience, it's an LGBTQ audience, it's an audience that's over 50% in this kind of gender queer world that they're imagining. And anyone that's thinking with some sense of common sense, you're thinking, how is society going to function if 50% of the population is queer? But this is not what corporations are taking into consideration. They're just believing these stats from these organizations as if they're 100% true. I think there's probably some skewing in the stats here, where they're saying over 30% of the population, at least the young Gen Z, is LGBTQ, and they're taking these stats and they're investing billions of dollars of their companies into these initiatives, trying to garner the attention of a large growing minority that really doesn't exist. And I think that's what we're seeing invading the space of video games, and the ignoring of femininity in any entertainment space. And I think that's the mythical minority that they're searching for in Hollywood. It's a trans modern audience, and if you have that in mind, everything we've seen in gaming so far makes sense. And I think this mythical modern audience has ruined gaming, and it seems like it's going to continue to ruin gaming if things all go as planned, at least according to these activist organizations. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about the situation. These are my thoughts. You tell me. You leave your comments, like, share, and subscribe. This is Wagner Knows Why. Catch you next time.